edition of the Ad Podcast. I think I've got something really special for you guys. If you don't recognize the man on camera, you guys have probably been hiding under a rock or not really in the advertising industry. This is David Angelo, who's the founder and creative chairman of David&Goliath. And David put up some really interesting posts on LinkedIn along with a bunch of other folks around the first of the year, which was kind of a retrospective, I would say, on their time at DDB and what that agency meant to them and the creative stewardship and mentorship that they got within those early days at DDB. And it was the first time that I feel like I've ever seen that much of agencies come and go and they get folded into, they get merged, their brands get sunset, but there seemed to be a very vocal opining, if you will, for the DDB name and what it meant to so many people that was going away during this most recent Omnicom IPG merger. So I reached out to David, and he was generous enough to agree to do the first part of a 10-part series where we'll be interviewing veterans of the DDB brand and really diving into understanding what that agency meant to them and how it had an impact on their lives as creatives. But before we jump into that, everybody gets a bio. David Angelo is the founder and creative chairman of David&Goliath, a Los Angeles-based advertising agency known for its challenger mindset and brave philosophy. With a career spanning over 3 decades, Angelo has built award-winning work for major brands, including Kia, Coca-Cola, Lexus, Michelin, Reebok, and the NFL, and has earned more than 500 industry honors, such as Cannes Lions, Show Pencils, and CLIOs. He's an American Advertising Federation Hall of Fame inductee and a respected voice in creative leadership. And in 2016, Angelo also founded Today I'm Brave, a global nonprofit focused on empowering youth through courage and purpose. David, thanks so much. I really appreciate you coming on and spending a little bit of time with the audience and, taking us back to the days of DDB and, what that shop meant to you and how that kind of imprinted on you as a creative leader when you started David&Goliath. So thank you for coming on.
Yeah, it's great to be here, Dylan. And thank you for this opportunity. It just, when I first heard the news that DDB was being folded into Omnicom or whatever agency is there, I was just in shock. I was blown away. And I think that goes all the way back to my experience there, which was a really amazing watershed moment for me in my life. And I have to take you back prior to that.
Because, yeah. Well, I love the origin story. So if you would indulge us, would you mind even taking us further back? Tell us about, where you grew up, what'd you study, and how'd you even get into the advertising industry from the beginning?
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, I am originally from California, grew up in the East Bay, a small town called San Leandro, which is right outside of Oakland, and come from very humble roots. One of 9. My father's Filipino and my mother's Portuguese, which was crazy. And it was mainly a Filipino household for the most part, so I had a lot of experience eating Filipino food, speaking Tagalog, all of that, which most people don't even know. But it was a very challenging upbringing, to say the least. My father, who was a war hero, fought in the Korean War and got shot up pretty bad. He had severe PTSD, and so I don't know how much you know about PTSD, but it's a war for the family as well. And so he was also a truck driver. A champion state truck driver. Like, he competed in truck rodeos and won all these trophies. And,
that's so cool.
And I have pictures of the trophies and all that. So, but he instilled this really, these 3 values in all of us. And that was to never forget where you're from, which means honor your story, honor your origin. Don't be afraid to tell people where you're from and that you came from humble roots or that you're Filipino. And then, give 100% of your heart and soul, right? And then the last is to always remember those less fortunate. And those were 3 values, whether they were served up that way. I kind of helped add a little writing to it, but those were the values that my father and my mother sort of instilled in us from day one. And, challenges for us was a fact of life. And, when we saw them growing up in this neighborhood, which was pretty tough, we saw those challenges as just, everyday life. And there was a point in my life where I realized that you can either run from those challenges or see them for what they really are, which are opportunities. And that takes a lot of work. But I would say one of my biggest challenges was getting kicked out of high school a month before graduation.
Wow.
I'd always seen myself as an artist since I was a kid, and I had great aspirations to go to the Academy of Art College in San Francisco, but I screwed up and I lost everything, and kind of blamed the world for it. And then my dad got me a job as a Teamster, local 853 warehouseman union, working in a warehouse, Foremost McKesson, which is a division of Seagram's. So it was the distillery, and working the graveyard shift as a warehouseman, driving a forklift and working the conveyor lines, which was the opposite of where I thought I was going. And so I was getting into fistfights, with fellow Teamsters. It was a rough life. And then one day, sitting on a forklift, late at night, like 3:00 in the morning, a voice came to me and said, "This is not you." And it was at that moment that I decided to listen to it and turn that volume up. And from that, it gave me the permission to chase my creative career. I went to school during the day, didn't have much money. So I went to community college. I think I went to 4 community colleges. Right. And
hey, me too. I went to Santa Barbara City College, and that got me into UCSB. So I think it's a great thing, for people who want to save money and get
builds character and of course helps save money. But eventually, I quit my Teamster job, which was, I think, one of the bravest things that I did, because I had a little bit of security there. I was moving up the ladder of seniority, had benefits, all that stuff. But I quit because I realized that if I'm going to pursue my creative dream, I got to go all in with it. And so I got a job as an intern at a small agency in Alameda, where I worked the stat room. And then from there, the founder of that agency, introduced me to a publishing magazine, and I became a paste up, graphic artist, while continuing to go to school. And then they loaned me some money, the publishing firm, they loaned me some money to pay for my college so I can go to the Academy of Art. And then after 10 long years of school, I graduated top of my class with a focus in advertising. And that was a long journey. I still to this day can't believe that I made it. One of the things my dad told me was, I was so worried about graduating at 28, 29 that he said, "You're going to be 28 anyway, with or without your degree. You decide." And so
that's a good point.
I was so excited that I achieved, this huge milestone for myself. And then I got a postcard out of nowhere that read, "Do what you fear, watch it disappear." And I thought it was really cool, and put it on my fridge. I was living in a studio apartment in Alameda, and then I just looked at it and I thought to myself, well, where do I want to start my career? And I thought of the city that scared me the most, which was New York City. And I packed up my lone bag, my sleeping bag, my basketball and 10-speed, and I had $300 in my pocket. My mom gave me a check for $300. And I moved to New York, not knowing anybody, and I just figured, like, if I can go all in with this challenge and do what I fear most, which is live in a big city like New York without knowing anybody, then at least I give it my shot. And if I didn't succeed, I can always come back home, But that was the road to DDB. And I had been talking to a creative recruiter for the creative register. Back then we called them headhunters, and her name was Danny Lennon, who she's still doing it today, which is awesome. Such a good spirit. And she basically told me that that a few big agencies like McCann and J. Walter Thompson and Gray didn't like my work, that they didn't really like my portfolio, but there was one called DDB that loved it, and they wanted to make me an offer. And I was just like, oh my God, somebody wants me. And so I got a one-way ticket and flew to New York, and it was crazy. I showed up at my interview at DDB, and I really hadn't done as much research because, there was no real internet at the time.
Yeah, no computers really even right back then, right?
Yeah, and you just depended on what your teachers and instructors told you about advertising and agencies, and there were so many agencies with acronyms, so it was really hard to remember. I just remembered the work, right? And so when I first arrived at 437 Madison, it's an address I'll never forget. It was incredibly daunting, to look up and see this big, massive building. And then when I took the elevator up to the floor, the creative floor, and it was crazy. There was a vibe on this floor that was like unlike anything that I'd ever experienced. And remember, I was coming from Teamster life and also working as a graphic artist in a small little place in Alameda, but really feeling the vibe of this place, and the fact that there was a whole floor dedicated to creativity was just like mind-blowing for me. And so as I walked around the agency, I started to see inside various offices, and it was crazy. It definitely was a culture that I wasn't familiar with. There were creative offices were just messy, and stuff was thrown around everywhere. There was drafting tables and tissue pads just everywhere. And by the time I made it to the head creative's office, the person who wanted to hire me, I felt like I went on this tour through this amazing creative factory, and so I was smiling pretty big before I got to my interview. And the person who wanted to hire me was one of two head creatives there at DDB that were running the agency for the most part. His name was Jack Mariucci, and Jack was a lifelong DDBer. Started working there, like 20 years earlier, prior to our interview, and so he was a wealth of knowledge when it came to DDB. And he basically said, "I love your book. I love where you're from. I went to that college, the Academy of Art, and I just love your thinking." And I couldn't believe it was that simple. I was just staring at him with such excitement, and I think I told him that I could do one-arm push-ups. I was so excited, and he looked at me and he said, "Okay, I'll see you on Monday, all right?" And as I left his office, there was a wall that had all of this amazing print work on it, and it was like a gallery, right? And there was Volkswagen ads, there was Avis ads, Michelin ads, Colombian coffee, all of that. And I looked at it and I was just kind of just blown away because they were the most amazing ads I had ever seen. In fact, they were ads that I had sort of put up in my bedroom above my drafting table as inspiration, for the type of work that I wanted to do. And so I instantly knew I was home. When I left that office or left the floor, I went out to the street and I jumped up, like, I was so excited that I finally got a job, and that I was going to work at this place, that did all the work that I had studied. And it was just an incredible feeling. Went down the street, made it to a payphone, called my dad and my mom to tell them that I got a job, and I would have loved to have seen their faces because they watched me through this whole process of getting kicked out of high school and never giving up. And so, yeah, that was my first experience with DDB. And I will tell you that, it still to this day is something that lives inside me. And that's why when I wrote that it'll never go away, it's always going to be within us. I truly believe that a place with that strong of a culture and mindset, that isn't something that's contained within that lives within walls. It lives within all of us.
Wow.
And I carry that spirit everywhere I go. And so, my first great experience was, I was just excited, because my teachers would tell us that, hey, listen, you're probably not going to produce anything for the first couple of years. Just be a sponge. And so my first week, I just literally walked into all of these offices asking these creators, creative directors and executive creative directors, if there's anything that I could do for them, drawing storyboards, sharpening their pencils, all of that.
So cool.
And I would sit down with some of them, and like Judy Protis, who did the Levy's Bread campaign, or Phyllis Robinson, who was like one of the most famous copywriters, that came out of DDB. And I would just sit down and Charlie Piccirillo, I'd just sit down and talk to them about Bill Bernbach. And they would the stories that they would share with me were just incredible. And I felt like I was I was like, I don't know, at the home of the New York Yankees. Like there was so many great stories and great inspiration that everyone shared. It was just incredible and just made me so proud to be there. Like that was my first place. I was actually working at a place that, created this incredible movement for advertising. And I was so fortunate to be there. And so, we would walk around with our cigarettes, because we smoked in the hallways, we smoked in our offices, which is crazy. You'd walk by your assistants,
so this was still Mad Men days, essentially.
Yeah.
What year?
It was 89.
89.
It was the end of Mad Men, right? But we were still smoking cigarettes, bumming cigarettes from our assistant. Everybody was smoking. It was like insane. And you're walking around drinking. So we're like carrying around a bottle of scotch, all that. And it was, it was kind of like this incredible spirited sort of place that just had like, so much energy. And there was no such thing as, 5 o'clock, right? Going home or anything like that. You were just on,
Wow.
you were just on, you were working all night if you had to. There was no sense of work-life balance. That was your life, right? And so my first experience with the culture was meeting this art director. I was a junior art director. I was meeting this art director who had been at DDB for 5 years. It was, he started there, but he had no hands, and he blew off his hands when he was a kid, putting together a pipe bomb of all things. And so I had read about him in the CA magazine, and to meet him up front and sort of hear his story was just absolutely incredible. And he was someone who inspired me on a daily basis, even though I was new to the city and in some cases, just out of my element. But being around him and seeing how much resilience and sort of tenacity and passion he had for the business, despite the fact that he had no hands, was just incredible and just inspiring every single day that I had the opportunity to work with him. And so we worked together as art directors, right? And we kind of belonged to this group of young creators that were always there late at night, always pushing each other, always, pranking each other. One night, I walked into my office like at 8 o'clock at night, right? And I'm still working on something, and it smelled like fish in my office. And I was like, why does my office smell so bad? And what happened was it smelled bad for the next couple of days because one of those creators put a dead fish up in the rafters.
Oh no.
to sync up my office. I mean, that was the type of stuff that we were doing, stuff that you would actually get fired for, at any other agency in today's
Yeah.
times. But it was just this really incredible sort of sense of kinship between all of the creators. Like we all wanted to see each other succeed. And one of the things that we would always ask ourselves is, what would Bill do? What would Bill say? How would Bill react to the work? And so my first shoot experience came when I was, as a junior, when I was relieving an art director went on vacation, and it was for TNN, and I needed to cover a shoot. It was a very simple studio shoot, where we were shooting a 3-leaf clover and putting a four leaf on there. So it said, so it read as a 4-leaf clover. And we ran out of clovers at like midnight at the shoot. And so we went to Hell's Kitchen and in a graveyard looking for other 3-leaf clovers that we can get, and put together. And so, I was there till 4 o'clock in the morning, walking around, gravestones and all that. And so I thought to myself, all right, so this is the world of advertising, and this is what it's like to be a creator. And, I just had so much excitement and so much, gratitude for being in the business because of what I went through, to get there. And I think one of the valuable lessons that I learned was I was so, as an art director, I was so determined to make sure that the work, lived up to the standards that Bill Bernbeck had set. And there was an account director who asked to see the work, and it was print ads for like GTE, this phone service. And she told me that the client demanded that we put the logo typeface in the headline. And that was kind of like, at the end of the day, any art director will tell you that that's kind of like a no-go. It really kind of destroys the look and of the idea. And so I told her that I couldn't do that, and I put my mechanical, the thing that I was building, the print ad, underneath my couch, and I left the office without even caring about whether or not the ad made it on time, because I just didn't want that type of quality to leave the agency, right? And that was the responsibility that we had as young creators, right? And so what had happened is the client got really upset, and word got out throughout the agency that I did that. And there was a really amazing creative director named Ron Louie, who everyone knew, and he was very, I'd say, soft-spoken, but just really understood great design. And he looked at me and said, "David, I heard that you hid your mechanicals underneath the couch, and we kind of have to meet deadlines and all that." And I said, "Ron, you're not going to believe what she wanted me to do. It's just like insane." And he just looked at me, and then he looked over at my wall, and there was a photograph of me playing softball, because I was very much into softball. I was playing like 3 days a week, etc. And he said, "You like baseball, right?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Who is your favorite, baseball player?" And I said, Ted Williams, Rod Carew." And this is, some time ago. And he says, "Well, why were they your favorite?" And I said, "Well, they had this lifetime batting average, well above 300, like 364, something like that." And he said, "Was that the best batting average?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Okay, so that was 364, which was, 636 shy of being perfect." And I looked at him, and he said, "You can still be the greatest, right? You could still be the greatest. You've got to pick your battles." And I looked at him, and I just went, "Oh, wow." And it was one of the greatest lessons I learned as a creator, to pick your battles, right? You're going in headstrong. You want to make sure that, you're always doing the best work, but there's going to be some times where you have to bend,
Yeah.
And I learned that at an early age. And then what had happened right after that And my boss at the time, Jack Mariucci, came over to my office, and I had been at DDB for like 5 months, and he looked at me and he said, I heard what happened, you know, and, you know, he said, you know, you got to get your shit together.
I never want to hear that.
And if you don't, I'm going to send you back to California. And he had a serious look on his face. He said, I brought you in, you know, and, you know, I brought you in for a reason. And it was at that moment that I was just like, holy shit, I blew it, you know, and now I'm going to have to go back home, you know, after all that work to get here. And then, so what I did was, at that point, I just went all in, and I just got so proactive. I didn't wait for a brief. I just did it. And so one of the assignments, one of the brands that we had at the time was Crown Royal.
Yeah.
And I was, you know, when I was a Teamster, I was loading Crown Royal all the time with the crazy, right? In fact, I would keep the purple bags and put my change in it, put my pencils in it and all that. And I remember working on Crown Royal, no one gave me a brief. I just did it on my own. And I took a bottle, a regular, you know, 750 bottle, and put it on a white piece of foam core and wrapped some ropes around it. And I wrote a headline, "Ready for a Chicago Winter." And I took that prop and I presented it to the head of Seagram's, and they bought it. And It was the most insane thing. And then next thing you know, I'm in Chicago putting up this 16-foot bottle of Crown Royal with giant ropes around it, right? And it ended up becoming this award-winning campaign. And you know, the bottle went on a tour to Dallas. We wrote boards that were contextual, all that stuff. And so that was the first step, right? You know, having that opportunity, you know, not waiting for, you know, an assignment to come to me. And I have this philosophy at D&G called "Fix the roof when the sun is out." Like, be proactive, you know, don't wait for a client or somebody to ask you to do something. Really look at their business and think about how you can push that, you know, to the next level without them having to come and tell you. And so, you know, that philosophy served me well. It went on and won a ton of awards. Even the CEO of Seagram's, I met him in the Seagram's Tower, which was like crazy. And I said, by the way, I was a Teamster driving a forklift, and I used to load, you know, 750 and 1 liter Crown Royal on the trucks and stuff. And I think I almost got fired, you know, for crashing a forklift. They told me that I didn't amount to anything. And so here I am in the top of Seagram's Tower, and you're telling me that I'm great. So I just want to let you know that I'm very excited to be working on Crown Royal. And he looked at me stunned. And but it was that moment that I realized that, you know, to be at a place that rewarded you for being proactive, to be at a place that inspired you to dream higher, was a thing that I was incredibly grateful for. And my boss pushed me, which was awesome, because at that point, that then led to the New York Lottery and launching Hey You Never Know, which ended up becoming, like, you know, a pretty famous campaign all throughout New York that won many awards. And it gave me the opportunity to not only, you know, continue to sort of create work that lived up to the standards of Bill Bernbach, but it also caught the attention of Bill Clinton and the presidential campaign in '92. And they asked me and my partner to come on board and serve as creative consultants. And that was just like insane. And so here we are. And I remember Keith Reinhardt, you know, the president of DDB, who's just an amazing human being. Is one of my all-time mentors in business. I remember he came and told me that the DDB was very well known for being involved in politics, right? And that they were responsible for some of the best work out there. And so I got a sense that he was proud that we were the team working alongside a few other teams. And I'd say one of our greatest moments is going to Hope, Arkansas, and meeting Bill and Hillary, and then going to Bill's aunt's house, which was in a very humble area, and meeting his aunt and all of that, which was crazy. And she ended up losing or misplacing a ham, And so, you know, in the kitchen, I think she put it in a cabinet instead of the oven. And so I was in the kitchen with Bill Clinton and his aunt, and we're all looking for a country ham. And I mean, talk about surreal. And then from there, going to the railroad tracks in Hope, Arkansas, at the station, and taking that photo with my partner and Bill, and then getting a call from George Stephanopoulos the night of the election, and saying that our spot was going to air on election eve. And just to hear, you know, George's voice, you know, we didn't know who he was at the time, but he was just an awesome guy. And to hear him in an edit bay where we were editing our second round of New York Lotto rework. So we put it on the speakerphone so our producer and our editor could hear, because they were part of the campaign as well. Wow. And that was just an incredible moment. So having those type of experiences, right, where it was triggered by my executive creative director telling me that I was messing up, telling me that he was going to send me home packing, and realizing that behind every setback is an amazing comeback, realizing that you're, you know, through any challenge, that there's incredible learning and incredible opportunity that can come from it if you're willing to look at it differently. Instead of looking at what's the challenge doing to you, you're looking at what it's doing for you. And having that shift was an incredible thing that I was able to sort of witness, you know, not just as a person, not just as a creator, but as an observer, you know, just to see what happens when you have the courage, you know, to keep going, even though you get knocked down. And so that led to other things, and just, you know, forever formed this incredible sort of experience for me that when I left DDB to go to Chiat Day, to go work, you know, I always had a dream to work with Lee Clow, who's, God, you know, just an amazing creator, leader, human being, etc. That was the reason why I left. It was very hard for me to leave DDB, you know, after 3 years and winning all these awards and achieving, you know, all the things that I did. But I was this person who was always looking for how can I expand my horizons? How can I challenge myself even more? And there was an opportunity to work on Reebok that as a leader that I just felt like was right at the time. But I still stayed focused, still stayed in touch with DDB. In fact, after I left Chiat Day, DDB called me back to come and freelance. And another great experience was just sitting in an office working on a pitch for Seiko, the watch. And
yeah, I love those guys. That are a client of mine at one point.
And just, you know, goofing around, talking about Bill Bernbach and the philosophy and how his spirit still wanders the halls. And I was sitting there with my partner, Rob Schlossberg, who is somebody that I work with at Chiat, amazing writer. And we worked really well together. And we're just sitting there, and I'm just going like, yeah, his spirit is everywhere. Let me see if I could channel him. And I was just goofing around, and I just looked out the window and I said, oh, okay, yeah. All right, thanks, Bill. And then I turned over to Rob and I said, all right, here's an idea that Bill just shared with me. It's all about a guy who's walking down the street, minding his own business, but little did he expect that he was about to bump into a beautiful woman, a woman who would change his life forever, etc. But he was 1 second late, right? And my partner looked at me and he said, oh my God, that's hilarious. And then he took it and he ran with it and he made it even better. And then it ended up winning the business, and it won a Lion. And it was just like, holy shit, I just threw that out, that Bill's spirit is still here. And so when I think of that, you know, when that happened, right, and the magic of how that came about, I believe that his presence and what he created with that agency, I mean, again, like I said before, it's something that you know, that can't be contained within walls. It's a spirit that lives in all of us, and it's that spirit, you know, of belief that, you know, standing for something. There's an old line that he once said that, you know, standing for something. When you stand for something, people will either be for you or against you. But if you don't stand for something, no one will be for you and no one will be against you. And those beliefs, you know, whether it came from the gray book of Bill Bernbach said, I truly believe at the end of the day that those beliefs for anyone that worked there stayed within them no matter where they went. And so that to me was, you know, and obviously there's so many more experiences that I could talk about, you know, in regards to my time there. But when I think about it, it reminds me of home. And that's how I always compared it to. I compared it to I'm home, right? And so eventually it led to another thing. I remember I had the opportunity to work at a really great place called Cliff Freeman and Partners. And oh God, talk about legends, Cliff Freeman. I mean, you know, being able to work with Cliff was just an incredible experience. But after leaving there, I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I wanted to start my own agency, but I didn't know how I was going to do it. And then I got a call from a good buddy of mine who worked at DDBLA, and he said, "Hey, listen, we want to talk to you about starting your own agency with the Kia account because we can't take it on."
Oh, that's how it happens. It was basically you were like a conflict shop incubator, essentially. That's so cool.
And Keith Reinhardt was at the helm of it, and you know, so I met at DDB. You know, DDB helped me launch David and Goliath. And,
wow, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, and for the first 4 years, they were there as a partner, you know, to provide services for me, and it was incredible, you know. And I look to this day, I still think I remember Keith said, "You're David and we're Goliath," and I said, "Yeah, but you're Goliath in a positive way. You're not the one that we're after." But I owe DDB so much. You know,
wow.
They gave me not only my first opportunity for my first career opportunity, but also, you know, to help start David and Goliath.
So cool. What a story, man. Well, I have so many questions. So I want to start with Bill Bernbach. You know, not knowing the history enough because I'm a relatively, I came into the industry in the 2010s. Was Bill still around, or had he passed at that point? Or be curious, like how did this leader culture get passed to the next generation? You talked about the gray book, but how did you guys, you know, the idea of channeling him? That's such a cool story. But how like, you know, like there are so many, like obviously there's David Ogilvy. There are a handful of agency legends that like everybody knows that are associated with the agencies that they founded. But then there are some founders that, you know, have been forgotten and all that's left is the letters on the wall. How did Bill stay infused into the culture of the agency, and how did you guys, you know, study him essentially?
That's a great question. When someone has that deep of an impact on you, right? It becomes, it transcends, you know, everything, right? You just feel like that, you know, that this belief, this mindset that he sort of implanted, you know, not just in the people that work there, but the industry. It leaves this really incredible impact and effect on you, right? Where you just feel obligated to continue that story. And there were so many great people that worked under him. I mean, Bob Gage, Bob Levinson, you know, Helmut Krohn. I mean, the list goes on. Gary Goldsmith. I mean, there's so many people that came out of DDB. And when you look at that and how everyone just kind of passed the torch, you know, everyone knew that they had to aspire to, you know, make Bill proud for the most part, even if he wasn't there. You know, that sort of type of impact and effect that he had on people was just incredible. And so when I was sitting in offices talking to the greats, I call them the greats, the stories that they would share with me were just like, holy shit, you know, it was game changing, especially during that time. And so, you know, you got people like me and quite a few others that worked during my time that always felt compelled to pass that on, right? And to this day, we still have a text chain called the DDB family, and it's just a group of creators that all work together, hung out together, party together, sweat bullets together, all of that. Yeah, I mean, it's that sort of mindset that still keeps us connected, which I really believe that is the power of culture. It's the power of a mindset and a belief that goes beyond the walls, goes beyond fear, goes beyond doubt, any of that stuff. It just resonates right within your soul, and you just feel compelled to keep it going.
I love that.
So he passed away long before I got there. I think a few years prior. But his son, John Bernbeck, was still there. So we saw him from time to time, and we talked to him as well. Yeah. And then, you just go on YouTube now and you just listen to his incredible speeches and interviews. It's just like you listen to it and you go, oh my God, that's so relevant right now. So it's that timeless sort of mentorship, that just continues to live on.
I love that. So let's go back to when the recruiter sent your book in, and you got these other storied agencies that weren't fans. What do you think it was about your book that maybe didn't resonate with some of the other agencies that you mentioned that the recruiter sent you in? And did you ever have a chance to ask Jack, what was it that, made him excited and wanting to take a chance on you?
Yeah. I would say that, I mean, you know what, it all depends who's looking at the book, in some cases it could be a recruiter, it could be, internally, could be somebody who may have looked at it, and didn't like it. It wasn't their cup of tea or anything like that. And, I've always stressed that I'm not everyone's cup of tea, but I am some people's favorite scotch. And so I think what Jack really loved about mine, and was not only the art direction, because he was all about craft, but also the storytelling aspects. I mean, it felt very much in line with DDB, and that was because I was studying the ads, right? That made them great. And he thought I was Italian. and the crazy part is he said, "You Sicilian?" I said, "Yeah." and I felt bad because I told my dad that. I said, Dad, I told him he asked me if I was Sicilian. He goes, "Tell them whatever, just get the job."
I love it.
And so what was beautiful is that I got a call from Jack the other day, and I hadn't talked to him in decades, and he just called me. It was the craziest thing, and he asked me if I would look at a friend of his, book, illustration book, and I said, absolutely, anything for you. And it felt like I was that kid again, that 28-year-old creator, wanting to impress him and really wanting to inspire him and reward him for hiring me, right? And so we had a long conversation about that moment that he gave me that kick in the ass. and the fact that he remembered why he did it. I said, well, I just want to tell you that what you did there, I mean, that was, to me, I'm forever grateful for that, because it really, I can look at it now and see that as a huge sort of moment, where I had a choice of whether to listen or just go all in, and defy whatever that obstacle was. And I thanked him, and it just it was just so crazy that he called me, and he was very proud of what I did with my career after leaving DDB. And he reminded me the time, this is crazy, he reminded me the time that he invited me to go speak at the DDB Creative Conference. And this is when after I quit. And I was a speaker in Budapest. And it was all the creative directors from all around the world were there, like from Saudi Arabia, Seoul, Kuala Lumpur. I mean, just everyone, right? And so I remember going out with all the creative directors at night, and some of them didn't speak English, and we're just all sitting around this big table. And it was after my speech. I gave a speech about going from a forklift to a advertising job. And I was talking about Bill Bernbach, and it didn't even matter if they didn't understand my language. They were just looking at me, and it was as if they knew what I was talking about. And I said, listen, here's the deal. Our fathers, our grandfathers, they could have all fought against each other in wars. We don't believe in the same religious beliefs. We don't believe in the same politics. But there's one thing that I know that is true, is that no matter where we're from, we can all believe that Bill Bernbach was right. And it was at that moment that the entire table just looked at me, and they just all just nodded their head. And I just knew when I saw that, I thought, oh my God, this is like incredible. It is a mindset that transcends language, a mindset that transcends, any other type of belief out there, and
it's like energy.
Yeah. Yeah. And if we could just package up that mindset, I mean, a mindset can inspire millions. Right. And I just thought about that, about how someone's belief, how someone's culture, how someone's sort of outlook can serve as an even bigger, source of inspiration, not just for advertising, but for the world.
I love that.
That's the power of a mindset. So
such a cool story. All right. I wanted to ask you about kind of you were on the tail end of the Mad Men era. I've watched that show cover to cover 2 or 3 times. It was such a amazing time to be able to have, that show be popular when I was kind of coming into the industry, and kind of seeing some of these stories in physical representation. And it's just great, whether you like the advertising industry or you're part of it. Obviously it was so successful because it was great storytelling. But can you talk about kind of the winding down of that era? You mentioned kind of 89 to 92. Was there, in your mind, was there kind of was there a reform to kind of weed out some of the, the wild boy stuff and kind of move into a new era? Or did that just happen naturally? Or, just be kind of curious of your observations of, kind of the end of times with that era, because, to some degree, work hard, live hard, play hard. I mean, it's to some degree, it's where great work comes from, is having that camaraderie with your friends who are literally arm in arm with you, eat, sleeping, and drinking, literally the work 24 hours a day. Be curious of kind of your observations on the passing of that era.
Yeah, it's a great question. I really believe at the end of the day, it's the speed of life that changes things. Right. Mm-hmm. And when I look back at that, at that era that I was part of, and then I look before that and see that things were even wilder, but I think that, and I really believe at the end of the day, it is the speed of life. Right. And with the not proliferation, but with the sort of, growth of technology, the growth of culture, the growth of, all of that, banning smoking, drinking being looked at, frowned upon, all of those things. I mean, you just go back in history, to the making of the wheel. Right. And so you could look at over time, things shift. Right. Yeah. And some people, you're either stuck in that muck, or you evolve with them. And I really believe that evolving with that speed of life is so important, especially in our business, right? Where technology is growing exponentially. I've seen the trends just come and go. I've seen people get all excited about something, and, and the whole world jumps on it, but then all of a sudden that fades away because the next thing comes. And so you just have to be, self-aware through it all, and know that change is, inevitable, and that, in order for you to stay relevant, that you have to evolve as well, whether you're a person or a brand. And do I miss those days? Yeah, I miss those days because it was, it was part of my growth. But I love where we are now. I love that we're continuing to evolve, and that's something that is very important to us at David and Goliath. I know there's a lot of uncertainty in the world right now, and there always will be. But I really believe if you stay true to who you are, stay true to your name, your culture, and in many ways, the name David and Goliath has been not just a name that we have on the door. It is, if you truly understand the belief behind it, right, and you embrace that in everything that you do, well, it's not just a name anymore. It's also somewhat of a personal coach, right? It can inspire you to think different. It can inspire you to evolve. It can inspire you to, care about others, in ways that, you may not have had at any other place. And that's why we place a lot of importance with the name and how we have to live it in everything that we do.
I love that. Going back to your Filipino roots, have you ever been to the Philippines?
No, I haven't. But we do have a Filipino QSR brand called Jollibee's
I know Jollibee's. And the only reason I know that is because I just took on a consulting client in around Thanksgiving, and they have 170 people in the Philippines. And the week after I booked the business, the CEO called me. He's like, "Hey, I know you're just starting, but do you want to come to our Christmas party in the Philippines?" And I'm like, "Absolutely." So I was out there for 8 days, Cebu City, Manila, and Dengue, where the whale sharks are.
Oh.
And me and one of my buddies from the agency, we actually left the compound of the Fortress Hotel and went into Cebu, and we ate at a Jollibee's just because we were like, we got to try this out. Papaya ketchup or banana ketchup or whatever, right? So funny. That's awesome.
Yeah, I grew up with all of that. I grew up with lumpia and pancit and chicken adobo and all of those beautiful dishes.
It's amazing food.
Yeah, and I've never been, but my plan is when I do, I wanted to bring my wife and our girls to go there, not just there, but just do a whole tour of Asia. And but I grew up in a Filipino sort of upbringing, and I'm so thankful, so grateful, for my heritage, and I share it with everybody. And people look at me and they go, "You don't look Filipino," and I go, "Well, you got to see my brothers." I'm actually the lightest one. My other brothers are pretty Filipino looking, I would say, for the most part. I took on the Portuguese.
I love it. That's funny. Well, the interesting thing too is they're so like pro-America because of us liberating them during the from the Japanese. They're like they're diehard crazy like America fans, and like if you think about like the outsourcing of dev work or ad ops people, kind of like the stuff that gets outsourced. Like some of the clients that I work with Filipinos, they've got people that have been with the company for 10 years, 15 years, loyal, great attitude, and like amazing workers, and like speak English oh my gosh, it's crazy. So I was just curious.
My dad really instilled that in us. It's the work ethic. And I mean, that's it. The work ethic, and great nurses. My mom was a nurse, my sister is a nurse, but just a really beautiful, caring culture that I'm just so proud to be part of.
I love it. All right. When you had that idea for Seiko, like, it sounds so novel of like, you literally was channeling Bill and you kind of plucked it out of the sky. But I wonder, how often is that true for you? Like, do ideas come easy that way sometimes, or is it a struggle? Is it sometimes one or the other? Like, how often is that the situation where you just pluck it from the sky?
Oh, well, it's work first and foremost. It's not
Yeah.
something that just comes natural. But I in addition to David and Goliath, I also teach a class over at the Los Angeles High School of the Arts. It's a curriculum that we created for them called Brave You, and it's all about helping juniors in high school, give them the tools to believe in themselves, step into their authentic purpose, and from that, with the use of AI, really start to craft a vision for how they can align their origin story with their greatest aspirations, with their their true potential. And one of the things that we talk about is we reference David Lynch quite a bit, and how David Lynch talked about an ocean of ideas. And as a creator, meditation is very important to me. It played a very pivotal role in my development, particularly around Today I'm Brave. And what we do is every class that we start, it's a 16-week elective. Every class is started with a 10-minute guided meditation, right, to your infinite creative portal. And so I truly believe that the ideas that we have are within us. They're there. It's not like we have to, some people have to work hard for it, but I do believe at the end of the day that if you can learn to trust your thinking, right? Trust your creative sort of whatever that is, right? That creative muscle. It's really about developing that trust, right? And the more you trust it, the flow just becomes part of you. And so for me, I've always been somewhat of prolific, because it's not that it comes hard or easy for me, but I'm able to have that confidence to access things, that would have taken people a longer time. And so I try to instill that in the students and help them find their space, right, through these guided meditations, and for them to trust what they see, trust what they feel, because quite often we kill great work or kill ideas based on, whether it's our ego or just, mind chatter that rules things out, as opposed to that feels right, that works, that's going to help, hopefully break through the clutter and create great results for our clients. So that it's also, I believe that you're a creator for life. It's not a job. And people often ask me, they go, "You sold your company and you're still working? What are you doing? How come you haven't retired?" And I tell them that you retire from a job, not a calling. Your calling is forever, right? Your passion project is your life. And so I still, to this day, I'm still doing it. I'm still working. I'm still creating. I'm a creative chairman and a junior art director. And so
I love it. I love it.
You don't lose that. You can never lose that, because it's not being creative is not a job or a discipline. It's something that's within you already, and it's within all of us. It's just how you develop that muscle. Whenever I think about what it took to start an agency, right, being a creator, I had to learn the other muscle. I had to learn the left muscle too. I had to learn what it's like to balance budgets, FTEs. I mean, all of the things that are important in running a company. And it was the combination of those two things, my creative muscle and my sort of analytics muscle, and bringing them together so that they complement each other, very much like yin and yang. And riding the razor's edge between the two has enabled me to not only maintain my challenger mindset, but also create some pretty, long-lasting relationships with brands that I covet, not just because we have an opportunity to do great work, but because that we never stop caring about their business, never stop caring about, slaying whatever Goliaths are in our way, or shattering whatever stretch goals they put out there.
I love it, man. You mentioned starting the agency with Kia, like that was basically a conflict opportunity through DDB. And it's almost like you guys were like an ocean before an ocean, right? Like you got Kia. I know you guys had the Samsung business at one point. We just talked about Jollibee. Seems like a little bit of a theme, but you know, how is it different? Yes, but you know, especially with the, it feels like the Korean business methodology is all about like they take vertical integration to like another level, right? Like
Yeah.
those guys like to own everything from like the guys that make the screws down to the advertising that's on the TV selling their products. So tell me a little bit about working with Kia and kind of the Korean culture and working with the Filipino culture with Jollibee. Like, is there something different working with kind of the like the business community from the East, so to speak?
Yeah. You know, one of the things that I've learned over time is that the challenger mindset exists in all of us, right? And growing up, hearing about Korea from my father, who fought in the Korean War, fought at the
Mm,
DMZ, right, and was a tank commander, First Marines Division, and hearing his stories, you know, growing up, and hearing the songs that he would sing, right. Over time, that became part of my sort of, you know, part of my life and experience as well. And so when I first heard about Kia, I was like, Kia Kia Motors, who are they? You know, and I had no idea who they were at the time, you know. But when somebody said, "Oh, it's a small Korean car company," and I thought to myself, it immediately took me back to my dad's experience as a Marine helping the people of South Korea, right? And and he blew up a bridge called Freedom Gate Bridge there, right? Because he was a tank
mm,
commander. And when I think about the bridge that opportunity that we had as an agency, and I had, you know, as a being his son to help create a bridge for Seoul to America, you
mm.
know, it gave me permission to believe that I was continuing his legacy of
So
helping
cool.
you know, the Koreans. And so plus being part Asian, right?
Yeah,
And having that sense of pride and, you know, for my culture, but also the notion that they're challengers. They have this amazing challenger spirit, you know. When you look at the history of Korea and Seoul, you can understand why they are driven, you know.
yeah,
And to see their growth in such a short time, being able to watch when people were making fun of the cars and making fun of the products and making fun of everything that was coming out of there, but just watching over time. And every time I went to Seoul, I was just absolutely amazed of what I saw. Like it was kind of like years ahead of anything we were doing here in the States. And I was like, this country is so inspiring. They are the ultimate sort of challenger mindset country. They're scrappy, they're small, and they're trying to sort of, you know, make believers, you know, out of everyone, you know, from their soccer to their golf to their archery to their technology to their hip hop. I mean, just watching them sort of grow and ascend as a country has been, you know, a pretty amazing thing to not only watch but also be part of, you know, small part of, you know, in regards to helping Kia. But then, you know, looking at Jollibee as well, because I have a connection there, you know, from my origin. And when I look at those two, and then Vizio, which was
yeah.
the founder's Taiwanese, who I absolutely love. He's from Taiwan. But just looking at their spirit and how they always challenged convention and looked at ways to innovate, right? With whatever tools they had, right? But that spirit, I truly believe, is what continues within the, not only within the country, not only within the brand, but also within the country. And so having that type of shared belief is what makes the relationship successful. I want to help them win at all costs, you know. I want to help all of our brands win at all costs because, you know, yeah, because they deserve to win, and they deserve to, you know, be seen with respect and admiration. And we're seeing a lot of that now, which is a pretty awesome thing to witness.
I love it. Well, David, I've taken up an hour of your time, and I feel like we've just scratched the surface. So I appreciate you giving me the DDB story, because that's what we were here to do, is to honor your legacy from DDB and to, let other creatives and people in the industry know what that agency meant to you and others. So we will have to have you back for episode 2 to really do the deep dive into David and Goliath, and your story as an independent agency owner yourself, and your because we were just kind of getting to scratch the surface there. But with that being said, as I continue this DDB series, who do you think I should interview next?
I mentioned him earlier. I think you should interview Gary Goldsmith.
Let's go. All right.
Gary is a legend, started his own agency, was the incredible agency that inspired so many of us, growing up in the business. And then also the Art Center. I mean, he was kind of running the show there, which is incredible. So inspiring human, inspiring creator.
That's awesome. Well, I'll try and track him down, and maybe even I might have to ask you for an intro if you're willing to make one. Well,
absolutely.
With that, David, if people want to continue to follow along on your thinking, learn more about Today I'm Brave, or connect with the agency, where would you like to send the audience to stay in touch?
LinkedIn. That's probably the best, where I do a lot of connecting, but also where I share whatever stories I can to help inspire people to step into their greatest potential.
Amazing. And for those of you who are watching, if this is the first time you're seeing the show, don't forget to give us a follow or a subscribe. If you're listening, don't forget to give us an honest review. That's how we find a larger audience organically. And last but not least, if there's a creative leader out there, a brand marketer who you think would love to hear the story that David laid out for us today, but most importantly, somebody from the DDB family who you think would, someone who's an alumni who would maybe enjoy the retrospective that we did with David today, but also as we continue on this 10-part series, don't forget to share the show. And with that, David, I will wish you a great week. I appreciate you coming on, man. Thanks for spending some time with us.
Yeah, thank you so much, Joan. Appreciate you as well.
You got it.